Hello and welcome to the CI Group's Changing Behaviours event. Many of you at home and watching now will probably have been working from home over the last 12 or so weeks. I guess adaptation is key to all of this, and I guess one high-profile event which has had to adapt was the Premier League restarting after 100 days. And that, of course, saw Aston Villa take on Sheffield United. And I was watching, of course, and Kelly Cates, the Sky Sports presenter, said this is the new normal when she was referring to teams coming out of the tunnel separately, which obviously we don't usually see, and, of course, the lack of crowds. That is the big one, amongst other things, for sure. So we'll talk about that in a little bit as well, but I want to introduce the CEO of the CI Group. David Watt is here joining us as well.
I felt the Man City Arsenal match. It was really slow to start, but I guess that was the new normal. That 15 minutes it took to get going. But I guess some of that was probably because there wasn't a crowd, so people probably weren't used to not having that atmosphere behind them. And I think that we all know that when there's a crowd that aren't behind us, the team actually have to dig really, really deep to get that additional performance out.
For me, I needed a crowd, but actually I needed one member. I needed my dad supporting me. So that was how I used it.
But it's interesting that you say that because you were feeding off of that positive energy. As one of our agencies in the group, we've got Corporate Innovations, which does live experiences. And we knew quite quickly that that was a long way off. So we then had to think about, well, how can we transform that live experience into an engaging experience, but still online? So giving that live feel, but in a virtual environment. So, and I think you're going to kind of like see today that that what we're going to bring together is we're going to bring together some live broadcasting, some pre-recording. We're going to bring together some great graphics. We're going to bring together some great animations, and that's going to give you a feel of how important the studio is to get that engagement. We know that Zoom and Teams are a great platform because we've all used it, but it doesn't really serve up content in the way that content needs to be consumed today, because that's what's really going to engage your audience and keep them engaged, and for you to deliver great new services. So, here's an example behind us now of how you can transform a studio into something slightly more interesting than just choosing your Zoom or your Teams background.
Right now, we are actually going to get into a chat that David had with the England Rugby head coach, Eddie Jones. I think it was earlier on this week where he talks about managing teams in this new normal and this kind of a surreal moment that everybody around the world is having. And of course, for those rugby fans who are watching, there are obviously some questions on the World Cup, the Six Nations and rugby as well. And we're going to then have a live Q&A with Eddie Jones. He's going to be joining us where he is in Japan right now. So he's 8 hours ahead.
Welcome from Japan. How are you?
Very well, thanks, mate. And yourself?
Yeah, I'm really, really good. So let's just remind ourselves of the England-Wales game. That was the last time we were in front of a large crowd. In fact, I think globally. How did you change your preparations for that game after the defeat against the French and then against that really difficult win in Murrayfield?
Well, it's all a process. You've got to concentrate on the process. Being successful is all about sticking to your process. And whilst the France game was disappointing, we learned a lot from that game.
So how are these things in the press? How are they affecting performance in the dressing room and on the pitch?
Yeah, well, I think like any business, you've got to avoid the noise. There's always some sort of noise going out there. And the only thing that really counts is what goes on in the team.
We've still got a few internationals to play. So what's your view of them getting replayed, and what's the outcome going to be if they're replayed or not?
Well, there's a couple of games to go in the Six Nations. We've got Italy in Rome. We know if we prepare well, that's a game that we should win. And if we win that, then we're going to put ourselves in a very good position to be the Six Nations champion.
What do you think about the getting back to the Olympics and World Cups? So what's the impact around the team, and how's that going for you?
Yeah, again, very positive, mate. I think everyone is sitting there in their homes thinking how much they miss the sport and how much they love the sport and how much they miss being part of a team.
What kind of data are you using what KPIs in this scenario for COVID? And then can you see who's performing in your team and not?
We've created one session a week where we call Going to the Well, where we test the players' physical and mental readiness to dig down deep. The most important thing is that resilience to pressure, because at the end of the day, and I'm sure it's the same in most business, the pressure situations are the ones that decide whether you win or you lose.
But what are your tips for managing the teams remotely at the minute? What kind of communication tips are you using or interactions with the actual England team?
Yeah, everyone at the moment is looking for clarity. So I think it's just really important at the moment to be very clear about the facts that you can be clear about, present that information in a meaningful way, and then give people hope. Yeah, I think that's the other thing. Give people hope that things are going to change, and when it does change, there's going to be an opportunity to get even better.
So if you think about the performance of a team behind closed doors or behind a crowd, what do you think that crowd generates in a kind of percentage term of increased performance?
The difference between home teams winning with a crowd and home teams winning without a crowd, I think it's something like 36%.
Wow.
So it shows you the positive influence of a home crowd, that they generate this enthusiasm, they generate an atmosphere where, they undoubtedly put the referee under pressure. But the good teams are able to cope with not having the crowds because they generate their own enthusiasm internally. And particularly the younger players have a key role to play. It's quite interesting because the younger players have no fear. I think it reinforces the role of the younger players that they'll in fact have more of a leadership role to generate that enthusiasm.
So it was great to have the insight there from Eddie Jones. And one thing that I think I picked up on was the fact that he said that his players are coming back fitter and stronger. Obviously, they have actually been sticking to personalised exercise plans that have been given to them during isolation. I think it is time now to go live to Eddie Jones. There he is. And my first question to you, Eddie. Hello, welcome from Japan. Yeah, what has been keeping you busy during lockdown? Just tell us a bit about what you've been up to.
Yeah, the first period of time really concentrated on our staff. We had a new coaching staff for the Six Nations, and we didn't have a lot of time to really discuss the intricacies of our game. So we went back, we spent a lot of time looking at our game and how we coach. So that's been a big driver. Over the last period of time, Super Rugby started in New Zealand, the Australian Rugby League started. So been following quite closely any trends that may be coming post-corona in the game and how we're going to prepare for it.
A question from Claire Jin Langyards, and she said, given the world we live in is now unpredictable and full of a need to be agile, how can you ensure your team and players remain focused and ready to perform at the right time when that time isn't guaranteed?
Yeah, I heard a great quote the other day, Claire, about there are certain sports that are wicked. And what I mean by wicked is that there's so many different scenarios in the game. You can't perfectly plan. Before the corona, we had quite a kind world. Everyone had a certain sense of security about what they could do, and now we've lost all that security. And it's the same. So we play a game where you get the ball and there can be 5 million different scenarios. So we're always trying to educate the players to be self-sufficient, to be good communicators, to make decisions quickly. And our training really focuses on that.
Second question, Eddie, is from Richard. As a lifelong rugby fan of Amp Hill Rugby Club, when you coached Japan to beat South Africa, you were the underdogs. But you said you wanted to be the fittest team at that tournament. Does Amp Hill need to be fitter and believe they can win to beat Saracens in the Championship next year, or is it more about tactics?
Now you've got to look closely at where the team is, where is the gap between you and the top teams, and how can you bridge that gap? So you've got to be fit and smart. So it's a great opportunity for the club.
So you need both fitness and tactics. So now a question we have from David. Eddie, do teammates from one club have their own particular culture? And as a national manager such as yourself, is it difficult to unify the different cultures and create that one English culture?
Every team you're in at the moment has been broken up. And when you get back together as a team, you've got to make sure you go back and revisit your values and make sure that everyone understands what's important. And we'll certainly be doing that once we get together in October.
Tony Norton, when the shops closed, our clients stopped funding marketing with the potential of no further spend this year. How can we keep the teams motivated when no one, not even the clients, knows what's ahead? Do you have any tips there on keeping teams moving and motivated?
Well, Tony, I think, the most important thing, as I mentioned before, I think is to give them clarity, be as honest as you can, tell them what the picture is like, but also give them hope, because things will change. And that's what your staff's going to need. They're going to need that clarity of knowing where you're at and knowing where they can go.
A question from Sophie here says, a new normal requires a new mindset. So how do you approach changing someone's mindset in a sports team or a business team if they're maybe not ready to change?
Yeah, we've been doing a lot of work on that recently, and it's always one of the hardest things to do. Changing behaviours, changing the way you think, because if they want to be part of the new team in the new world or the new environment, then they're going to have to change. And so make it clear where they're at, where they need to go, and where's the gap, and how are they going to fix it. It's their problem. It's not your problem. How are they going to fix it? Get them to own the problem. Of course, you give them as much support as you can to help them change, but they've got to own that, because everyone is going to have to change to some extent.
Okay, a question on, I guess, dealing with your team here. We said from Jonathan Evans, during these difficult times, how much contact, by whatever means, have you actually had with the England players individually or as a team?
Yeah, we've got a squad of 45. So the squad's split up between our 3 assistant coaches. So each coach has a particular positional group. We have a weekly or bi-weekly meeting with that group. We give them tactical challenges to do, make it a bit of fun. That's the job of a coach, and I'm sure it's the same in business.
Actually, another question here from Jonathan as well. In the discussions which you've been having with your players, are there any broad themes or issues or concerns that they may have raised? And I guess these could be similar to what we might be seeing in business as well.
Yeah, well, again, it's completely variable.
Yeah.
We've got some players who've got young families, and their major concern has been, how can they be a good teacher? Courtney Law's got 4 kids under 8. So he's trying to balance everything, trying to teach his young twins who are 6. Tom Curry went out for a run. I think he ran 15 Ks and reported a calf injury because he just overran. So there's a great contrast. And again, it's just knowing what each player needs to help support them in whatever situation they're in.
Are there anything from lockdown in this period that you would continue with that maybe you hadn't thought about before this pandemic came into play?
So one of the things, as soon as I came to take out, my wife said, you're going to set up an office. So we set up an office. So I spend most of my day in the office and have dinner with my wife. So I went straight into a work routine. But a lot of people, it's taken time to find their work routine. I think the thing that I would encourage everyone is to keep their work routine in place, because what it has done, it's enabled people to find what works for them. And if you haven't read it, there's a great book out there called Deep Work, which has got some great points about finding your best work routine.
What are you? Are you an early bird or are you a night owl?
I'm early, and I've
me
got
too.
it's difficult because my wife doesn't go to bed till 3 o'clock in the morning, so we've got
Ouch.
very contrasting timetables.
That doesn't work too well then, does it? A next question I had actually from Tim Groves from the Rugby Pod. He's asking about The Last Dance. I'm sure you've seen it, the Netflix phenomenon about the Chicago Bulls. And he said, what did you make of it, if you've watched it, and the team dynamic, of the Chicago Bulls with Michael Jordan?
The NBA is like an entertainment competition. When they're playing the league games, there's basically no defence, it's all attack. And then when they get to the finals, they play defence hard. And I think that was the big change in Jordan. And Jordan's a unique character. Guys like him, I've probably seen one in rugby, which was George Gregan, who was captain of Australia, was exactly the same, absolutely driven.
Finally, Eddie, because I know we have to let you go, Jock Stein has got a favourite quote which said, "Sport without fans is nothing." Do you agree with that?
People want to see sport. It brings joy to people's lives in what is a difficult period. So for the next period of time, we've just got to adjust to it, get on with it, make the most of it. And the interesting thing is the teams who love each other will do the best now.
Eddie Jones, thank you so much.
Okay. Thanks, Rachel. Pleasure.
Thank you.
All the best, guys. Cheers. Thank you.